More than a decade ago, an Ohio nurse was stabbed to death in broad daylight. Just moments before her death, Aliza Sherman was simply waiting to speak with her attorney about her impending divorce trial. Then someone in a dark hoodie stabbed her and just took off. So many years passed by before an arrest in her murder, which is why it's all the more shocking her very own divorce attorney that she was planning on meeting was the one allegedly behind her murder. I'm Elizabeth Millner with Law&Crime. Aliza Sherman's divorce attorney, Gregory Moore, faces a number of charges, including aggravated murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping. But as prosecutors announced the reason why he allegedly killed his own client, it makes this case a whole lot more shocking. For 12 years, Aliza Sherman's family just wanted justice. Her case nearly went cold as it remained a mystery for years. But then on May 2nd, a stunning arrest. Divorce attorney Gregory Moore was arrested in Austin, Texas by U.S. Marshals after almost getting away with it. So why would a divorce attorney kill his own client? Well, we'll get there, I promise. But before we do, let's go back a bit to 2013, specifically January 3rd of that year. According to Gregory Moore's indictment, on that day, Gregory and another unnamed person learned the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office was investigating the divorce attorney's cell phone usage in 2012 when bomb threats were called into the courthouse where Gregory was scheduled to be in trial. Those threats happened on January 12, 2012, May 30th, 2012, and July 10th of 2012. Prosecutors say it was a pattern that Gregory exhibited just to delay court appearances that he was scheduled to be a part of, because obviously that's his job as a lawyer. I mean, we've seen delays in cases a bunch of times, but not because a bomb threat was called in allegedly by one of the lawyers in their own case. But in Gregory's case, it seemed like where there's smoke, there's fire, that type of situation, because prosecutors say he allegedly kept doing it until March 24th of 2013. Now keep that date in mind. So prosecutors say when Gregory learned of the investigation, he got a new cell phone on his law firm's business account and was given a mobile hotspot that was also on the business account that an unnamed person who was in charge of making changes to devices on the firm's account. And that's how his horrific plan came to be, and how he was able to avoid law enforcement for years. So on March 24th of 2013, Gregory texted his client Aliza around 2:31 that afternoon to have her meet him at his law office at 4:30 that day. He even allegedly requested that Aliza let him know when she was leaving for their meeting. So a little before 4 p.m. that afternoon, Aliza texted her attorney saying that she was leaving for the meeting and would be there by 4:30. Gregory responded, "Take time, closer to 5. Aliza messaged back and said, "I left. We'll wait. Call me when you get there." She drove from her home to downtown Cleveland and just waited outside his office until her lawyer arrived. But prosecutors say Gregory never intended to have that meeting with her. According to the indictment, Gregory arrived to his office and used his electronic access to swipe into the front door of that building around 3:51 p.m. that day, which is important because that's around the time Gregory allegedly told Aliza to take her time and that he'd meet her closer to 5. Prosecutors say after he swiped into the building, he either didn't actually enter the building or he just went inside and then left prior to 4:07 p.m. because from 4:07 to 7:30 p.m. that evening, he wasn't inside his office building. At 4:15, he called Aliza, but they didn't talk on the phone at that time, nor did he call her back again. Then 4 minutes later, Aliza texted him saying, "Sorry, couldn't get phone. Got here quicker than I thought. Let me know when you are here. I will wait in my car. No problem." But Gregory reportedly didn't communicate with Aliza again until around 5:11 p.m. Prosecutors say from about 4:23 p.m. to 7:32 p.m., Gregory disconnected his cell phone from the Verizon cell network so he pretty much could be undetected, but he was still able to send and receive texts. So from around 5:11 p.m. to 5:22 p.m. that evening, Gregory kept texting Aliza even though his phone was disconnected from Verizon. Prosecutors believe it was likely done by using the hotspot. Then around 5:13 p.m., Aliza texted Gregory, "Will you be here soon? Standing outside building. If not, we'll go back to my car." Then she sent another text a minute later because remember, they were supposed to meet at 4:30, then close to 5. But she texted him, "Will you be here soon? Kind of cold." Gregory responded, "Been here." Prosecutors say that text was designed to cause Aliza to keep on waiting outside, believing that Gregory was inside his office building waiting to meet her. 3 minutes later, Aliza sent him another text. "Doors locked. I thought you would text me when you got here. Been in car 45 min. It's okay. How do I get in?" 6 minutes later, she followed up, "If you are here, why don't you let me in? I guess I will go back to my car. Too cold. Text me when door is open. Thanks." After sending that message, someone approached Aliza, circled behind her, chased her a few hundred feet, and stabbed her more than 10 times before just running off. But here's the thing. Prosecutors say that masked person was either Gregory Moore or an unknown co-conspirator. And here's another thing. After Aliza was already stabbed and the suspect was out of view of surveillance cameras, Gregory kept texting Aliza. Prosecutors say he sent her text around 5:41 p.m., 5:47 p.m., 6:01 p.m., and 6:16 p.m., 6:25 p.m., and 6:43 p.m., repeatedly asking where she was, whether she was going to meet him, and for her to call him. I want to thank Odoo for sponsoring us. If you don't know Odoo, they're an incredible all-in-one business management software that provides you with a range of applications. One of my favorite Odoo applications is their sales tool, the Kanban pipeline game changer. Whether you're working with leads or full-blown opportunities, you can visually track every single stage of your sales process. Just drag and drop to move deals forward. It's fast and honestly kind of satisfying. When it's time to send a quote, it's literally a couple clicks. And the reporting, super clear. You get a live view of your pipeline, conversations, and what's working, so you can focus on closing, not guessing. So right now, you can get a free 15-day trial of Odoo's all-in-one business solution and see how it can make your life easier. Check it out at odoo.com/LCNewsCRM. According to the state, those texts and requests for calls were only there to create false evidence that Gregory had no idea what was going on because he wasn't even inside his law office, but knew Aliza wasn't there, but also was unable to receive calls but knew Aliza wasn't calling him. Around 7:30 that evening, Gregory entered his office building from a dock entrance. No one saw him, including police who were investigating the crime scene. 2 minutes later, Gregory connected his phone back to Verizon and called Aliza again around 7:32 p.m., 7:33 p.m., and 7:43 p.m., and pretty much kept on continuing to call her until a little after 9 p.m. that night. Then the next morning, which was actually supposed to be the day of the divorce trial, Gregory came into his office a little bit before 8:30 a.m. And a little before 9 a.m., an employee at the law office contacted Verizon and tried to cancel the mobile hotspot from the office's business account. That same day, an employee deleted a voice message left by Aliza on the office phone without making it available to law enforcement. 4 days later, Gregory filed a suggestion of death notice in Aliza's divorce case. And on April 2nd of 2013, her divorce case was dismissed. It never went to trial, and Gregory got a new cell phone with a different number from his law firm. But from then on, the murder case almost went cold. In 2017, Gregory Moore pleaded guilty to 2 counts of inducing panic and to a misdemeanor count of falsification and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. That same year, his law license was yanked and the court ordered him to stop practicing law, contacting clients, or giving legal advice. But still no arrest or even charge for Aliza's murder until just last week. So nearly 8 years after he was sentenced for the bomb threats and more than 12 years after the stabbing, he was indicted on multiple charges, like 1 count of aggravated murder, 1 count of conspiracy, 6 counts of murder, and 2 counts of kidnapping. He hasn't entered a plea yet. That'll come when he's arraigned next week. Thankfully, after 12 years, Aliza Sherman's family and loved ones are getting the answers as to what happened in 2013. And now the case has to go through the next process, the court process. So with that, let's bring on retired Judge Fanon Rucker. Fanon, thank you so much for joining me today. First I got to ask you, what's your reaction to this motive from prosecutors that Gregory Moore allegedly did this to incapacitate Aliza Sherman so her trial wouldn't go on as scheduled?
Absolutely outrageous. First of all, thanks for having me on. Glad to discuss this incredible case. The facts are unbelievable. The motive, and you have to look at the fact that this has been 12, 13 years since this has happened, and the police and detectives have been diligent in their review and their investigation, and they finally have been able to present the evidence to have this former lawyer indicted. But the motive, the reason, are you kidding? Because he wasn't ready to present a case and didn't want his client to have to go to trial. I presided over so many cases over my career, and the idea that a lawyer would go to such extremes to avoid a trial is mind blowing.
And what do you make even of the vicious way that Aliza was murdered? She was stabbed nearly a dozen times just out in the open in daylight back in 2013.
Yeah, clearly this, and I just say former lawyer, this ex-lawyer, this ex-attorney, this former person who swore an oath to the Constitution and to the rule of law, had some clear, well, I don't know, clear, but certainly it demonstrates to me the suggestion that this person had mental health issues, because what reasonable thinking person would, number one, do something like this, and then in the vicious way that he took this woman's life, doesn't suggest that he was cognizant of his faculties when he did this. That's what comes to my mind.
And what are your thoughts on even just the lengths that Gregory Moore allegedly went to, to delay his trials even prior to Aliza's murder? And I guess I couldn't even say allegedly necessarily because he pleaded guilty to calling in bomb threats. His law license was even taken away after his felony conviction in 2017. But even just, the thought process behind just having or wanting delays in trials, because to your point, we've seen it a number of times. It's not out of the usual to ask for a delay, want a delay, and a judge actually grant it. But it seems like for here, this preparation was just kind of the motive behind him doing these really unimaginable things, such as calling in a bomb threat or even allegedly killing Aliza as well too. But what are your thoughts on just his actions, alleged
Yeah, again,
actions?
absolutely outrageous. I would be curious to know what other type of history he had as a litigator, as an attorney. Here's someone who people called upon to advocate for them in the most serious circumstance when they were either facing very difficult times in their lives or when they had some legal issue going on, and they asked this person and they entrusted him with their most personal and confidential matters. And here he was, somewhere in the far reaches of his mind, formulating nefarious actions in order to avoid the responsibility of advocacy that he owed to these individuals. I mean, calling them bomb threats so he didn't have to have a case heard. And he took responsibility for those things and fortunately lost his license as a result. But again, I keep going back to the idea of the word outrageous, mind blowing, absolutely unbelievable, because those are all the adjectives that come to mind when I think about this entire situation.
And even as an attorney, right? Like a lot of people are kind of in the nose of what goes on in the law. Obviously, they're attorneys. They went to school for this, graduated, and started practicing with this. But even just the lengths of kind of covering this up as well, too, just were extreme. Telling Aliza to meet him at the law office around 4:30. Then it was 5 o'clock. Then he disconnected from the Verizon cell network. Then he was texting and calling Aliza after she'd already been stabbed. And then less than a week after her death, he filed a notice of suggestion of death in her divorce case. So, what do you make of just these lengths to cover up what he had allegedly done? Because prosecutors say he's the one who did this.
One of the things I used to tell individuals in my courtroom is when they were there for particular types of offenses, and they would say, "It's the first time I did this," I would correct them and say, "Well, I'm sorry. My experience teaches me that the first time you're standing in front of me is not necessarily the first time that you did what you're accused of doing. It's the first time you got caught." And that's true of a lot of offenses that people actually commit. And you have to say, with the particular design and intention with which this person acted, you have to believe that this was not. I'm not saying this was not the first time he may have taken someone's life, but this is not the first time that he acted in a calculated way to go around procedures to do something that others would look back and say, are you serious? Like, what's wrong with you? This wasn't the first time he did these things. It was too calculated, and he took, as you said, too many. He went through too many lengths to get to this place to suggest that he just came up with this on the fly. Like, oh man, how do I get out of going to trial? No, he did this and other things on probably a regular basis, which I'm sure has been examined since these events have happened over the past 12, 13 years.
Especially as those bomb threats and stuff kind of came to light, especially in this indictment as well too. And then there's this surveillance video. It shows the masked person kind of running away from the scene of the crime after Aliza was stabbed. But prosecutors in their indictment said that it was either Gregory Moore or possibly another unknown conspirator. Does any part of you, and I assume the defense will kind of use this kind of to their advantage in a way too, to kind of paint it as this wasn't Gregory Moore, why would he have the motive to kill his client, that type of thing. And then obviously we know that the husband that Aliza was going through that divorce proceeding with, he had sadly passed away a few years after her death. But in your opinion, do you think that the prosecution, or excuse me, the defense will actually use this surveillance video as their advantage to be like, you know what, it wasn't Gregory Moore who did this, it was somebody else?
Yeah, certainly that is an interesting component to this. I mean, we're speaking in the position that he calculated and he did these things, and that's what the indictment says. But then the indictment says, well, it was him, or it was somebody that he directed to do it. that certainly makes things a little more difficult. But that's not all that they have. That's not all of this intense investigation revealed. What it also revealed were the timing of the phone calls that he received, was the fact that he was calling her even though the evidence showed that he knew that she was already deceased or that he had already stabbed her. And then he went through the back door to act like he was just coming in and called her again. I mean, again, there were so many other parts to this that even if they can't prove that that was actually him that committed the act, that he was certainly involved. But what will be interesting is to see how much similarity or how much, if there's anything particular about the person in the video that reveals the particularities of the defendant himself. Certain way that he walks or moves, or any idiosyncrasies in his arm movements or in the way that he turns his head. If there's anything like that that they can tie to him to further accentuate the argument that this was actually him, as opposed to he was responsible and had somebody do this. But yes, the defense will most certainly be using that as a significant source of their resistance to this charge.
Yeah, and that's understandable as well too, because everybody does have the right to have a defense attorney as well too, even for an attorney who's accused of murdering their own client. But anyway, as far as just the investigation overall, the indictment came down 2015. The murder happened in 2013. Why do you think it took so long? Obviously the electronics were a big thing as to kind of pointing the finger at Gregory Moore being allegedly behind this. But why do you think it took so long? Because this case, honestly, from the family's perspective, almost went cold. But then to their surprise, finally an arrest is made years after the murder.
Statute of limitations apply to every single crime except murder. They reopen cases after 20 or 30 years. Why? Because some diligent investigator or detective says, I just can't let this go. There's some information that was missed, and they continue to come over it. Perhaps a new witness came forward. Perhaps in the combing through the evidence that they already had, there was something else that revealed itself, and they went down that particular path that they hadn't gone down before. It will be interesting as this case develops and we hear more about the evidence and the investigation, exactly what led them ultimately to the conclusion after all this time that this was the set of facts and these were the actions that took place that they didn't know back when it actually occurred, or even in 2015, when he was always suspected of being involved tragically in this woman's murder.
And just reading through the indictment was particularly sad. You see Aliza's pretty much her last messages being to her attorney, asking if he was here or if she should wait in the car, how long he'll be, while she's just kind of waiting, only for this plot to kind of already be in the works, allegedly, I still have to say. But what do you just make of her last moments, as she was pretty much likely unaware of what was about to happen to her?
Was what I suggested before. Here is somebody, and as lawyers, as litigators, we have clients who come to us in their most difficult, troubling, and a lot of times most chaotic periods in their lives. And they're looking to us for answers. They're looking to us for guidance. They're looking to us to advocate, to be their voices when they don't know the right words to say or the right maneuvers to take. They look to us for help. And those text messages are exactly what I was suggesting about that person's position, that person's reliance on this lawyer who she was hoping was fighting with a sword in one hand and the law book on the other, on her behalf, to get her the best position that he could in court so that she wouldn't be taken advantage of in our legal system. And those desperate texts, I think, are an indication of the sincerity of her belief that that's what he was doing and that's what he was there for.
Yeah, because she seemed, just by all accounts, like a sweet person, never would necessarily hurt a fly or anything like that. And then just for the person that she had trusted to kind of guide her through these proceedings as she was going through a hard divorce, I mean, I can't even imagine what her family is dealing with right now. And I do hope that they are okay. Fanon Recker, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Before we sign you off, though, Gregory Moore's arraignment is scheduled for next week. What do you think will happen?
Yes. Yep. We expect that there are going to be family members of this woman who will appear, likely her co-workers, but also we know there are going to be some interested detectives and police officers who again never let this go, who looked at the evidence over and over, and who interviewed potential witnesses, and who found information to support this indictment. And he's been serving time, and he is a disgraced lawyer. I expect that he'll be locked up, and he'll stay locked up while this case proceeds.
Right, and we'll see what happens come next week when he is arraigned on his charges. Fanon Rucker, again, thank you so much for your insight into this case. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much.
And Gregory Moore is expected to be arraigned on Friday, May 16th. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.